All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to one of this month's ATAP live streams. We are very excited to have you here, and we have an awesome speaker here for you today with Laura, and excited to hear from her. We'll get started in just a minute or two, so hang on tight with us. So, Laura, you have any exciting plans for the workday after this?
I know. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Yeah, we are having really beautiful weather in New York today. So I am planning to take a walk in Central Park this afternoon. This was kind of my last meeting of the day, and I want to get out and get some fresh air.
All right, that definitely sounds like a good time, especially with so much just of being cooped up inside. So,
Yeah,
uh,
good to get away from the laptop.
I'm certainly with you there for sure. All right, well, I think we can go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone once again to today's ATAP live stream. My name is Nikeo Hill. I'm a recruiter and sourcer at Wayne Technologies and the vice chair of ATAP's program council, and I'm going to be hosting today's live stream. And for those of you, maybe you are new to ATAP or this is your first ATAP event, the Association of Talent Acquisition Professionals was founded in 2016. We represent the interests of talent acquisition, recruiting, and staffing professionals at every level worldwide. And our mission is really to cultivate a community that can spark innovation, engagement, and knowledge sharing for talent acquisition, just to rise all of us up together. And we're a very member driven organization. We honestly could not do our work without the over 850 individual members, as well as our corporate members and some of our invaluable sponsors, like our platinum sponsors of Greenhouse, Saba, Scout, and our gold sponsors of Eightfold, People Results, Recruitix, and Smart Recruiters, as well as our silver sponsors. And so maybe you or someone you know could benefit from this type of professional association with the ATAP. Maybe you would like to help volunteer and help advance ATAP's work on a global scale. So please, if you or someone you know is interested, head over to atapglobal.org and see what it's like to join our organization. But today is Thursday, June 10th, and we have an awesome topic for you today. But I just want to go over a couple of important programming details so that you're aware. This session is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording along with the slide deck sent out to the email you used to register for this event. So if you're wondering about the recording, maybe you missed something, don't fret. You'll get that in your email. And we will have a Q&A session at the end. We have up to an hour scheduled for this event, but we are being flexible just to, you know, how things might go from a Q&A standpoint and how much time and engagement you guys might like to have with Laura. So today's live stream is entitled Transitioning from Order Takers to Advisors in TA, and it is being presented by Laura Mazzullo, owner of East Side Staffing. And Laura, I will turn things over to you.
Thanks, Nikeo. Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen now so you all can see the presentation, and we're going to get started. So I was saying to Nikeo before we began that you can definitely type in all your questions and comments into that Q&A section, and then we're going to go through them together as a team towards the end. I don't want to spend this whole hour just talking, so I'll probably talk for about 20-25 minutes, and then I'd love to even allow for 20-25 minutes of conversation, because I believe we learn with each other, not just from one side to the other. But as you just learned, you also have this recording for tomorrow if you need to run to your next meeting. So I'm really excited. This is a really important topic about going from order taker to advisor. So we're going to get started. A little bit about me. I just wanted to make sure that for those of you I don't know, you know why you're listening to me today and why you're learning with me. So I launched my own recruiting firm 8.5 years ago called East Side Staffing. I specialize in the placement of HR and talent pros. So I'm very knowledgeable about the talent acquisition profession from not only my own work, but of course, partnering with the TA community to hire better for their own teams. You've seen me in a bunch of articles and podcasts, and I started a YouTube channel during the pandemic called Learn with Laura HR. So I would recommend that you subscribe there and find me on all the social media channels, and we'll continue to learn with each other. I believe that recruiting is a skill and all skills are worthy of honing, and absolutely we continue to learn every day. So Before we get started on this topic, I want to just address this notion of blaming and shaming. And funny enough, Nikeo and I were just talking about this right before we came on, that there's a lot of negative stuff that's said about our profession. And I just want to address how it shows up even within our profession. And so I want to make sure that we know whatever we're learning, we're going to end up doing a better job after this new information. So I always love this quote from Maya Angelou that, we do the best we can until we know better. And then when we know better, we can do better. So the key is not to kind of blame others within TA or shame ourselves. So I recently tweeted this out and I wanted to share it with you here. So I said, I hear this a lot in the talent acquisition space where people learn something new and then call me and say, oh, Laura, I'm so guilty of that. I should have done better. It doesn't help us. I think what we can do instead is say, I used to do that. And next time I will do this. And it's really a beautiful shift in not blaming each other or shaming ourselves. So it's really an act of self-kindness, but it's also important that, as I said here, if we replace the I with a you, then we're blaming. So we can say like, oh, my colleague Bob does that all the time. He's so guilty of that, or he's awful at that, or he should have known that. It sounds harsh, like, oh my God, I would never do that. But if you pay attention to it, the blaming and shaming shows up a lot. So for today's course, I just want to make sure that when it's coming up for you, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've done that. Just try to be kind to yourself, that's how we learn. Because this is really blocking our community from learning right now. So stopping the blaming and shaming. So today's topic has to do with being an order taker versus an advisor. And I'm really big on semantics and making sure that things are broken down really in a granular way, because we often talk so much in buzzwords and strategy in our space. And I think people kind of forget really what we're talking about. And so I wanted to kind of break it down for us so that we're clear on really what we're getting at today. So this is a format that I use whenever I'm starting to brainstorm or when I'm beginning a search and I'm beginning to project manage or start a strategy. I come back to the who, what, when, where, how, and why. And I don't know if any of you use this system. I actually learned this, I think, in 3rd or 4th grade when we were doing book reports, and you would read a story and then have to literally break down what you read in the story and share it with the class. And these were sort of the prompts you would use. A good friend of mine actually has a 7-year-old who's learning it now. So I'm glad to know they still use this. It was one of my most favorite things to learn because I'm such a visual learner and I love breaking things down. So I still come back to this concept when I'm thinking about how we can advance our profession. And so I want to talk to you first about an order taker and how this shows up. So who is an order taker, right? In recruiting, specifically in talent acquisition. So typically an order taker is someone who's a people pleaser. The ultimate goal is to be liked. It's to kind of diminish any potential conflict, to make sure that the hiring manager is happy. There's an enormous amount of serving in this type of a role. We want the client to always be happy, right? This is the customer is always right mentality. And a lot of us were conditioned this way in recruiting. So again, no judgment. It's really what we were taught, right? And so you see it, the what is really where you see it in how we communicate. This is where we often will say to a hiring manager, like, sure, Mr. Client, absolutely, happy to do that. It'll be easy, great. Even when we don't mean it, we're sort of yesing them, we're pleasing them, and we're in turn being really dishonest because often it's stuff we know can't be done and is impossible, but we're so nervous to actually be advisory and be strategic and be consultative because we're so used to just taking the order and trying to give it back to them. So when do we see it? At each step of the journey, where do we see it? We see it when we're behaving on Zoom, on the phone, in person. In fact, Nikeo and I were just talking about how there's verbal communication and written communication. And I said, oh, it's so funny. That's part of what I was going to talk about today. It's like there's just so many ways that we show up in behavior in recruiting that we just need to be aware of. So are your emails, like before you send them to hiring manager, do they feel really servant order taker like, or do they feel advisory? Like really kind of self-evaluate before you hit send. And the why behind order taking. So as I said, there's a conditioning about what we were taught, about what our profession has always done. that we just need to acknowledge, right? That that's just a fact. We were conditioned to really be people pleasers, especially for those of us in recruiting for over 5 years. I would say there's a lot of unlearning that we're doing. But for many, it's also fear. We're afraid of giving the hiring manager truth. What if they don't like it? What if they're angry? What if they're upset? What if they get defensive? So there's like a real threat there that we're not comfortable with and that we can really dismantle as a community, and just genuine lack of confidence. So especially for newer recruiters, but it's not always newer recruiters, it can be anyone. There can be an insecurity of, do I really know what I'm talking about? Am I really the expert? Am I really giving the best advice? And so that's just something we want to be aware of. So this is kind of the order taking persona that we've seen for years, and that I really want us today to start thinking about how we can address. So what is an advisor in talent acquisition? So an advisor, who they actually are, is a partner. They are equals, and we are business professionals with expertise in hiring. This is really important because I hear a lot of TA pros saying, they describe themselves as sort of separate from the rest of the business, right? And it's like, oh, I'm in TA, and then the business wants, the business needs, the business said. You're part of the business. Even if you're an external recruiter, as far as I'm concerned, I've always been an external recruiter. When I'm engaged on a search, I'm now part of the team and I'm part of the business, right? And that's a really important differentiation, because an order taker doesn't feel like part of the business. They feel like they're just serving the business. But if you think of yourself as an equal, as just as powerful and strong and important, and not necessarily like a lower status level, it shifts the whole mindset. So what do we say to show this, right? So if the order taker is always doing the, sure, Mr. Client, yeah, whatever you want, the advisor's thinking about we. So I've been coaching a lot of TA pros recently on the corporate side, and a big aha moment for a lot of people has been this notion of talking about we versus you and me. So I'll give you an example. A lot of times they're in a hiring process with a hiring manager. The hiring manager has really difficult expectations, unrealistic expectations, and they'll start advising them with you. Like, I know you want to meet 15 candidates, but you're going to be really exhausted and you're going to find that candidates are really frustrated, and I don't think it's good for you. If you switch it to just a we, and I shouldn't even say just, it's a big shift. If you shift it to we, if we meet 10 candidates, we are going to lose them. It is not in our best interest. We would be providing a horrendous candidate experience, and we risk keeping our job open too long. That language just immensely calms the hiring manager down, and again, creates a more even and equal playing field where suddenly you're not serving them and it's not you versus them, you giving them advice. You're giving the team advice, right? You have a shared goal and you're in it together. So again, being aware of this at each step of the hiring journey, on Zoom or in person, with your written and verbal communication. So I sometimes go back to emails that I'm about to send and check, did I do everything you, or did I go with we? Do I sound like I'm just serving them in a kind of a subservient role? Or does it read that I'm really an equal and an expert in hiring? And so there's editing that has to happen. So it's just really important to kind of look at your communication before you send it. And again, if you're doing it in Zoom or in person, being willing to take 10 minutes afterwards and do a little self-reflection on how you did in there. So why are people advisors? Why do we want to be advisors in TA? Well, confidence, right? Confidence helps us to be advisors. We know our stuff. We're the expert in hiring. We can teach these hiring managers how to hire better. We're there to educate them, right? It's important. Unlearning. So again, like all that conditioning that's stopping us in the order taker mode, we can work on unlearning that now, meaning like really just kind of taking it apart to relearn and learn new things. And because we want to be consultative, so many of you probably follow Amy Miller. She's a friend of mine. She's got a great YouTube channel called Recruiting in Yoga Pants. And Amy and I were once talking about being advisors in TA. And she told me that one of her old leaders at one of the big tech companies said to her, Amy, being consultative does not mean you're good at customer service. Your hiring manager is not always happy, but that's how they learn. And I thought, what a great point. We're so caught in the order taking mentality about being customer service driven, whereas the advisor is consultative. And that's not always the same, right? Because it's not always comfortable to share what actually needs to be done and where they can improve. So I just wanted to break this down for us in kind of a more granular way to hopefully give you a sense of what we mean by the difference. Where I see this show up the most is in the intake meeting. So I know we don't all call it intake meetings. Some of us call it kickoff meetings or recruiting strategy meetings, but you all know what I mean. This is the meeting that you're having with your hiring manager at the very start of a search. And this is literally, I really believe this. This is where you set the stage for being a partner and an equal. And it's really where most of us mess up, right? Because it triggers all of the stuff we were conditioned to do, and we panic and we don't do it. And so how does it look in here? So this is usually what we start hearing in this meeting. So I'm going to need someone with these 15 must-have requirements. How quickly can you fill this role, recruiting partner? You know what, just send them one at a time. I don't need a short list of candidates. I don't need to do a competency-based structured interview. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I'll know them when I see them. Just keep sending them over. So I want to hire someone just like me. And you know, you should do this. You should go to LinkedIn. You should post this. You should try to recruit out of Google. You should go here. And we hear this. And this is kind of the stuff that the hiring managers have been conditioned to do, to talk to us like we're just their order takers. So they have some unlearning to do too. And we're working on that. And so we hear all of this in the meeting. And the brave advisor is capable of going through each of these and explaining why this doesn't make sense, right? So when I have a hiring manager say to me, Laura, how quickly do you think you're going to fill this position? How quickly can you fill this position? I will say to them, you know, I can fill this position as quickly as you and I are partnering well together. So, I mean, and I explain, look, I can source, let's say for 2 weeks, right? And maybe it takes 2 weeks to interview. So really you should fill this job in 4 weeks, but most HR roles right now are sitting open for 3 or 4 months. That is not the blame of the recruiter. That's often some blocks going on your side, hiring manager. And I walk them through that. Or just send candidates one at a time versus a short list. Okay, so here's what happens when we do that. So you, recruiting partner, I send you a candidate on Tuesday, you really like them, but you have 3 more candidates to meet next Wednesday and then 1 the following Monday. By the time you come back to candidate number 1, they're gone. So this is why I'm going to send you 3 to 5 people and you're going to meet them all in 1 week and decide which 2 or 3 are moving forward. So each of these can be an opportunity for you to educate on why it's important, why this doesn't make sense, and you're educating them on how this is stopping them from getting to the goal. So again, our goal, we want to fill this job, and we can do that as a team, but I've got to let you know where where my limitations are too, right? So they're doing the same thing as you versus me. You fill the job, you go do this, and it's just not working. So what do we normally do? We hear all of this and we go to our peers in TA. We send them a text, we call them, we say, oh, wait until you hear about my hiring manager. They're the worst, right? And back to my initial slide on blaming, this is what we start doing. We just start blaming the hiring manager, and then we don't actually educate the hiring manager. So I love this quote from Brene Brown that clear is kind and unclear is unkind. It's really the kind thing to do, to be clear with your hiring managers and let them know where some of these comments are absolutely asinine and hurting their process. But most of us are too scared to do it. And so we leave these meetings without having done it. And I think the next time you want to call your peer and vent, of course you can still do that, but I would make sure you're really educating your hiring manager. How do we actually advise them? Data, right? I mean, that's really, we talk about data all the time. The one thing I'll say is most of us are just using quantitative data. Number of resumes sent, number of interviews, time to fill, time between interviews. I send my hiring managers really qualitative data that's guiding them and advising them on how they specifically can improve. So again, we want to work on this as a team, but there's also some things they need to be doing to hold themselves accountable. So some of the things, so I send a data just to kind of give you a visual, like I literally type it up in Microsoft Word, save it as a PDF and send it over every Friday. And it gives them a sense of where we are each week and what both of us can be improving upon. So one of the things I'll do is unique challenges with this opportunity. I'll list them out. You know, maybe our salary is way under where it needs to be. Maybe the role's already been open 3 months. And so there's word in the marketplace that the job is stale. Whatever it is, I want the hiring manager to really know what's going on with the challenges. I will send them a few profiles of candidates I've spoken to and not presented to them. So I don't give the name, but they might say to me, you've got to recruit somebody from Google. I definitely want somebody from Google. And I'll talk to someone at Google who's earning $80,000 more than this job pays. And so I'll write, candidate spoken to and not presented, VP of HR at Google, earning 80K above our budget, not interested, right? And usually there's 7 or 8 people I've talked to where the hiring manager then can look at that data and say, wow, do we need to raise the budget? Do we need to change expectations? What's going on here? All the dates, right? So I did mention some of those dates. Time to fill, time between interview rounds is an important date. So sometimes they'll see, wow, we opened the job March 18th. The recruiter got us candidates. We started interviews March 25th. And then we didn't do second interviews till April the 18th. Like, what was that gap about? Reasons candidates aren't interested in moving forward. This is a really fun data point to share with them. So often if a hiring manager is leading with ego, they'll say, well, I met all 5 candidates. They were great. So let's have all 5 come back in. And I'll say to them, well, let me see if the candidates are even interested in moving forward. I need to talk to them and debrief with them. And lo and behold, maybe 2 of those 5 aren't interested in moving forward and have some really constructive feedback on why. And I will include that in the data so the manager knows, where did we make a mistake in the candidate experience? What about the job isn't appealing to them? What about our work-life balance isn't appealing to them? Like, where are we losing people and why are we losing people? And then areas for improvement based on candidate feedback. So in my intake meeting, I'll say to hiring managers, I'm going to receive candidate feedback about their experience. They're going to let me know what they're feeling, how they're feeling, what's coming up for them, what they like and don't like. Do you want to hear that feedback? Do you want to know how you can improve candidate care? Because I certainly want to know how I can improve. And if we're doing this as a team, we probably both should be open to that feedback. So I include that. Right? Hiring manager was on their iPhone during the Zoom meeting. I heard them distracted. They hung up early. They took a call. Like, wherever that candidate experience is going awry, I literally type it out. And I think just seeing it visually for them is a really helpful way to begin the advising process. So advising is us telling the truth. It's being clear. It's giving them ways to be educated, to hire better, to learn. But the data kind of holds us accountable to say, these are the specific things I'm seeing. I'm not just making this up. Right? So think about things you can include in your weekly data that are really more direct and not beating around the bush, but getting straight to where they can improve. And again, when you get stuck, come back to this concept of like, if you're not sure if these questions really make sense for your data, just come back to like, who's my candidate? What do they want? When are they meeting the hiring manager? Where is there an issue? Like, just kind of come back to this, this format of brainstorming. I find it really helpful. Because again, I recruit for HR and TA, and these are the common challenges I see. But if you're recruiting engineers or doctors or accountants, you might have a totally different set of data. So trust your own kind of storytelling. So this is a time that we actually need to self-reflect. I think it's really important that we recognize like what's blocking us. And I was talking about this actually with Nikeo before we started, that there's a lot of negative stuff that we hear about TA, but what concerns me even more is what we say about TA from within. So these are things I hear weekly, right? From TA pros. Oh, Laura, anyone can do talent acquisition. It's not rocket science. We're here to serve the needs of a hiring manager. They are our customers. Recruiting is such a low barrier to entry. Anyone can do it. We're just a cost center. We're non-revenue generating. It's so self-deprecating and defeating. And we wonder why we struggle advising, but it's because we don't actually believe in ourselves. And it's really challenging us. So we've got to dismantle this. And again, this is that part I'm talking about the blame and the shame that we feel. So if you feel like, oh gosh, I think I do that, awesome. No judgment. This is just something to think about. The first step when you find this happening, whether you're the one saying it or your peer is saying it, and you're kind of going down this rabbit hole of like, TA is not that important. It's almost subconscious, but we do it a lot. It's getting curious, right? What's coming up for me is I want to work on, I wonder why I say that. I'm starting to notice that I say that. I wonder how I can improve that. Just take the judgment out. So like, you don't judge yourself or others for saying this. You just try to work on unlearning it. So like I was recently on the phone with a friend of mine in TA, and she said, Laura, I don't know. Recruiting isn't that hard. Like, it's not rocket science. And I said, it's not that hard for you because you've been doing it for 10 years, but it's really hard. And it's a really important skill set that not many people in the business have. So be proud about what you do. And it just shifted the conversation into more self-worth and self-confidence and had a lot less judgment attached to it, which really helps our profession. So you'll find me talking a lot. I don't believe in saying there's good TA pros and bad TA pros. I actually think there are just TA pros who haven't learned or unlearned or have had teachers or trainers or leaders who haven't really educated them on some of this. So I don't love it when we do the like, oh, that TA team is so bad. And I hear it even from SVPs of HR, like, oh, our internal recruiting team is awful. And I push back every time and advise every time, like, are they awful or are they just needing training, needing development? Are there things they need to unlearn that they were once taught? And it just kind of stops the conversation from being really emotionally reactive and actually gives us an opportunity to look at how we're talking about ourselves within HR, within TA. And then share your observations with a friend. So I always, once or twice a week, we'll have a call with a fellow TA peer and just talk about what we're noticing about ourselves, with where we're growing. Because again, going from order taker to advisor, it's a growth. And there is, some growing pains, which we're going to talk about in a second. But the idea that, it's okay to be kind of curious with each other about what we're learning, it's really important. So those are a lot of the things that we have to unlearn within our community. I think these are some other things that I've noticed coming up a lot. The client is always right. We're here to serve them. I'm not as important as an HRBP. This is a new one I'm hearing a lot of, which again comes from HRBPs maybe feeling higher in status than TA, but it's up to us to also feel just as important, right? That we have to hustle for our worthiness. The reason we people please is we want the manager to really think we're valuable, think we're smart, that we have to prove ourselves. Even if a corporate TA pro needs to call an agency TA pro and now they feel like that's a defeat and, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do that. I must be terrible at my job. And, resisting training yourself because you feel like you should have all the answers. This is stuff we were once taught, right? I was taught literally all of these things throughout my career and they don't serve us. They're just not helpful. And so, you'll hear me talk a lot about recruiter experience. We talk so much about candidate experience. The candidate needs to have an impeccable journey. Yes, of course, as does the recruiter, right? You are also worthy of having a positive journey through a hiring process. And you can't have one when you have all of these self-defeating things going on in your brain, or that we're talking about our profession this way, or that we think everybody else in the business is more valuable than us. It's really important to remember that we are on even playing field with them. So when I talk about this with people, when I'm coaching TA pros one-on-one, they're like so frustrated that something's holding us back. Like, why would we even do this? And I always remind them, just think of an onion. You're peeling back layers. It's okay. Like, we're complex human beings with a history of a profession that hasn't always had a great reputation. These are the main things that I see holding us back, right? Our own ego, our own fear, that we don't have the upskilling and training, that maybe we don't even enjoy talent acquisition. There are so many people in this profession that really, I think in 2020 have had a chance to decide if they even want to continue in the field, right? Because you need the passion to do this type of growth. We're scared of conflict and we believe that maybe advising hiring managers is going to be a conflict. It's going to be challenging. So these are just kind of things to notice. And like, I know for me, people pleasing was a huge one to unravel. Like, I can set boundaries, right? I can tell a hiring manager that, no, I can't talk Friday night at 7 p.m. Just doesn't work for me. And that took me years to do, right? Because I used to always just, of course, whatever they need. That wasn't useful. So I would say to you, the one thing to think about, and I've got 2 more slides and then we're going to open up Q&A. This is really the idea of just growing pains. Like, no one told me that when we're going from order taking to advisor, it's tricky. It's like when we say to HR business partners that they're going from HR generalist roles to being strategic. It's not easy. I mean, you're basically dismantling what you once did. So this is another tweet I had recently that any of you who live in major cities know, or I don't know if New York is the only one who has this slogan, but on our subways, it says, if you see something, say something. And I said, I wonder if this creator was once in recruiting, because it rings so true in our profession. Hiring managers need our wisdom. So if we see something, we have to say something. And it's hard, right? And that's why it's kind of painful and we don't want to do it. So I would say to you, get in the arena, say the thing, even if your voice shakes, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're afraid to do it, then immediately share what you did with a TA peer and then celebrate that accomplishment, right? It's not the same as filling a job, which is typically what you're evaluated on. But giving really instructive education to a hiring manager is an accomplishment. And it's certainly something that you need to celebrate. And so you said what needed to be said, and it's going to help the whole company. And then again, expect and ask for training, for a coach, for membership to organizations like this one. You're just as worthy as the rest of the business. I've talked to so many global heads of TA in the last 6 months who have invested in training the rest of the company, the rest of the business, but not their own team. And I think for us to get through the growing pains of growth and evolution, we need to make sure that we're getting the support we need to do it. So this slide is going to come to you at the end. I just wanted you to be really clear on the benefits of being an advisor. I mean, it literally helps everyone, right? Hiring managers learn how to hire better. Our industry improves. As individuals, we gain energy and passion and enthusiasm. It's the work we love doing, right? To feel like we're actually improving a hiring journey. The candidates are happier. The employer brand is better. Hiring becomes fun again. There's data to back it up. It's collaborative. Again, it's the we. And so it's just really important to know why you're doing this hard work. It's not just to grow, it's to actually make it better. So, okay, Nikeo, I'm going to jump the mic back to you, and we're going to talk through any questions that may have come up during the session.
All right. Okay. So everyone, if you have not already submitted your question, please just feel free to toss those into the Q&A specific box. But we do already have a couple to get to here. So
Okay.
Thank you so much, Laura, for the awesome presentation. And let's dive into the questions. So we have one from Jessica Farm, who asks, how are you capturing the feedback from candidates? With direct questions or using something like SurveyMonkey?
Such a great question. So I'm a small business, Jessica, so I just do it on the phone, ask specific questions, write it down and type them up. But for bigger companies, absolutely a SurveyMonkey is a great way to go. I know some of the applicant tracking systems may even have like a follow-up document that can automatically get sent out. I will say this though, I know from being a candidate myself over the years, and probably if we all think about it, we're more likely to be candid on a phone call or a Zoom with someone that we've built a trusted relationship with versus typing it all out. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing it at scale, of course, you may need to send a survey. You just may not be getting as honest of feedback as you would from a debrief call.
Awesome.
Let me also just say this though, because I think this is important. So when I talk about this, and I don't know, Jessica, if this is coming up for you, but a lot of people will say to me like, I have 20 requisitions to fill, 30 requisitions to fill. There's no way I can do this level of service. So I tell them like, when was the last time you told your leadership team how many recs are on your plate? So here's like one data point that I love. If you have 5 candidates per search, which is typical and kind of on the low end usually, right? If you have 20 recs open, 5 candidates per search is 100 candidates that you really need to be talking to every week. The candidate kind of expects that level of service and partnership, right? And it's impossible. I don't know any recruiter who can talk to 100 people. So like I max my portfolio at 3, maybe 4 or 5 absolute max searches, because that's 25 candidates that I can manage. And even then it's a lot. So it's another good point if you need to add staff to your TA team and you need resources, just to remind them it's going to be impossible for you to get all this data from that level of volume.
Awesome. And I have a follow-up question as well to ask on this. What kind of questions do you typically ask candidates with, and how do you word them? Because I know personally, it can be sometimes difficult to get a candidate to be totally honest about how something went, particularly if they're afraid of, how it might come across or if it might come back to damage them in some way.
Yeah, I wonder if this is going to be a business for a third party at some point, right? Because I know like as an agency recruiter, I just get so much more honesty than internal recruiters do. So I wonder if there's a way that, you end up hiring a consultant to gather it. But I just literally open up with open-ended questions. How was your experience? How was Jane's behavior in there? How did it feel? How did we do, right? So like usually I've prepped them on, we're doing a competency-based interview guide and they're going to ask these types of questions. Like, did they do that? Did they follow along? And I think genuinely the candidate appreciates that as a recruiter, I'm basically asking so that I can educate the hiring manager. So I kind of position it that way. Like, look, this feedback, whether anonymous or not, will just be helpful for me to help educate the manager. So then they might say, well, actually it was weird. Like, they said they had a guide from you, but they didn't want to follow it at all. And they went totally haywire. And I'm like, awesome. Thanks for letting me know. Like, what did they ask in there? And I don't judge it. I just kind of get it. And then just keep thanking them. Thank you so much for sharing. That's so helpful. And then it really does help their candidate experience to feel like someone's listening, right? Because so much of a candidate experience is feeling heard.
Awesome. So Obadullah Sharif, sorry if I butchered that, but he's asking how to handle mushroom growth in recruitment consulting business.
What is it? Can I ask what mushroom growth means?
I would assume it's probably quite explosive growth that maybe happens all at once, and you
Okay.
maybe don't have the infrastructure to support that kind of growth.
Okay. Thank you.
That's how I would take it. But
within TA, he's saying?
Yes, in a recruitment consulting business.
I don't know if there's like a straightforward answer to that. I have so many follow-up questions,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I guess to me, the first thing that's coming to my brain is just recruiter experience. Like there's only so much you can take on. So it's the ability to probably say no to some searches. Like I have no trouble saying to clients, like, can't take that on right now. My portfolio is full. You don't have to take on everything, and have peers that you can refer business to.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just to add to that, I
do.
think that there's a lot to be gained if you can't take something on, and like Laura said, refer to that business to one of your peers. I'm sure that peer will appreciate you, and it's all the benefits go around. So
Yeah.
um Alex Halber is asking, do you think hiring managers should create a pre-hire project if that's a part of your interview process, or should it be the TA specialist's responsibility?
I love that question. I really don't believe in projects. So the problem with projects that I've found, so again, I place HR and TA pros, right? And so many of you who are in TA might have had interviews where you've been asked like, okay, we're looking for a chief marketing officer. So go ahead and source and let us know what top 10 profiles you found and how you would go about emailing them and what you would say. And then they take all your ideas, don't hire you, and literally do that to find their chief marketing officer, right? I've heard this endlessly. And so I don't really believe in it because it's a lot of free work that they're often using to take advantage of the candidate. So I usually am asking my hiring manager, like, why do you want to do a project? What exactly I brainstorm with them. What project are you thinking about? What have you done in the past? And then yes, do it together. I don't really believe it's like, again, a you versus a me. So I'll give you an example. Like I was recruiting a head of learning and development. They really wanted to see somebody present, and they wanted the person to do a whole presentation. And as we were brainstorming, I said, so you want this person to do totally free work, right? To come in with a complete presentation, present it on stuff your business can use, and then not hire them. So what if we did something that's less of an ask of them? And so what we got to as a team was like, the candidate was willing to come, and this was pre-COVID, sit at the boardroom, and then they were going to just brainstorm. So they were going to pretend like there was some real challenges going on the team, and like, how would this person, just a conversation, how would you advise us? What would be your plan of action? It was like much more relaxed, and it worked out really, really well because they got to see their thought process, but the candidate didn't feel taken advantage of. So we have to be really careful about these projects because it's usually an opportunity to take advantage of a candidate. So I would say you have to do it together.
Awesome insight.
Yeah.
So Evelyn is asking, as an agency recruiter, how can you be an advisor to the hiring manager when there is an internal gatekeeper, for example, the internal corporate recruiter who is in the middle?
So I don't see that person as a gatekeeper in the middle. I see them as my teammate and my equal, and that we're in it as partners. And so it's really important to me that I build that relationship as quickly as I can. So I always have a one-on-one meeting with that TA partner and let them know that this is not defeatist, that they called me, that I know it's hard that they called me. They wanted to do it on their own. We kind of break the ice of whatever's coming up for our egos and let them know, look, our goal is shared. We want to fill this job for the hiring manager. So we need to be a shared team. Like whatever feedback I get from the candidates, I let them know, and then we present it together to the hiring manager. So I never exclude them. In fact, I think I get a lot farther by bringing them in on every single call, on every email. most of them really like that too. So it just kind of, again, it keeps us from that us versus them and from the good recruiter versus bad recruiter. They're not bad recruiters for needing our help, and we need their buy-in just as much as they need our help.
Awesome. I love that mindset change.
Yeah.
So Mackie is asking, I work with the skilled trade, and it's not very often that we can give a batch of candidates in a timely manner. So we will send one at a time. How would you handle this?
I love it. So this is what you would do is like sometimes that's a one horse race, right? Like that literally might mean that your one candidate is the one because you found this needle in a haystack that can start next week. So you just have to educate your hiring manager on that. And I usually start with there's another thing I should have included it here, but we can do another presentation one day down the road. There's another concept that I love that's called feel, felt, found. So I'll use it with hiring managers who are trying something new for the first time. So like if they're used to always seeing a short list of candidates and now they're only going to see one, I will start with this. Like, I know you might feel really weird about meeting one person and needing to hire them. A lot of my hiring managers have felt the same way, but they have found if they met that amazing person and didn't hire them right away, they really regretted it because our top 3 competitors are also pursuing this person. So it's going to be uncomfortable, but we might meet this one guy and hire him. How do you feel about that? And really get that hiring manager excited about this idea of like, okay, I think I can do it. Great. And then when they come back to you after meeting that one person and say, I really like them, but I want to see more people, you can say, we talked about this. It might be really hard to see more people. So are you okay to make an offer like we talked about, right? You've already had the conversation. It's just preemptively like expecting their pushback.
I like that, anticipating those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So Mackie's also asking, I would assume this is it sounds like from a candidate perspective, but how do you say no to a job when a job's wage is too low?
Gosh, I mean, honesty, right? Like the salary is just doesn't work for me. And either the company can raise the budget or they can't, but you don't want to really settle in this market if you can find something else, of course. But it's a whole nother topic is to stand in your worth and always try to get what you want. I recently heard from a peer of mine, when they say it's not in the budget, that's not a fact. That's just a negotiation tool. And I thought that was a helpful reminder that sometimes they say they can't, but they can. So just try to be really firm about what you need.
Awesome. And we have another question here of how do you serve as an advisor in TA in owner-driven companies and family businesses where HR and TA are order takers?
I know. I try not to work with them anymore if they are. That's the advantage of being on the outside is like I can say no to business that doesn't align with my values. And if they're really, really ego driven and incapable of seeing me as a partner, it's really not going to work. But if you're internal at one of those places, it's hard, right? You might have to move on to a company that values you. There's not everyone that's going to get on board with this transition. And I guess that's
And
okay.
Obaidullah also adds as well to this question
Yeah.
of how do you kind of convince him of this change when he or she views TA as just a cost center?
Yeah. I mean, you cannot, we can only control like our side of the street, right? I work on it. I'm sure many of you work on educating leaders about TA, separate from hiring managers, but literally CEOs. We can do our part. But there will be companies stuck in the dark ages. There will be companies that can't evolve. And I would say, like, for those of us who have choices of where we can work and who we can partner with, we say no to those places, right? And we work in environments. So whether you're internal, you choose companies that value you as best as possible. Of course, they can still be growing. And if you're external, you try to choose clients that really see your worth. It's impossible, I think, to say, I'm going to take this ego-driven owner who thinks I'm nothing more than just a subservient order taker and completely transform him or her. I think that's our ego trying to do that. We think we can control the other person, but we can't. So a lot of what we're talking about is educating those willing to be educated, but there are some who are completely resistant to it. And I think it's just saying like, thanks, but no thanks to those people.
Awesome point. Oh, so we have a clarification from Mackie. I guess the question was actually that the wage that the employer is offering is too low, and we don't want to take on the job. So then, how do you say no from uh, the perspective of a, maybe an agency recruiter who's not wanting to take on a particular job from a client that doesn't pay what they're expecting or wanting?
Wait, can you repeat the question, Nikeo, so I understand who's
Yeah, so Mackie, the original question was,
right about the skilled trade?
how do you say no to a job when a job's wage is too low? The clarification
Oh,
is that
say
this
no
is
to an
the
external.
wage.
Okay. So how does an
Yeah, that
agency
the
recruiter say no to an external, to a client whose salary is too low, right?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it sounds
Okay.
like.
You literally go back to that little equation I sent you. You go into the arena, you say no. It's horrifying and you're scared and you don't like it. And then you call a peer and you say, I just said no to a client, but this is why. Then you celebrate that win, and then you get any more training you need to do it better the next time. I mean, you just have to do it. You really have to get in there and do it and share it with someone that you trust. It's horrible to say no, but we have to keep practicing it because we have to really set boundaries. Of course, you educate, try to see if they can raise the budget, but if you know it's completely unrealistic and unfillable, why would you waste your time and the time of candidates? So
Awesome.
remember
And
recruiter experience there. It'll be a bad experience for you if you take on a search that you know can't be filled.
yes, definitely. Amen to that. Um, and Iris is asking, what data do you suggest in providing to a client if the salary is too low?
Yeah. So usually when I'm doing that part of candidates I've spoken to and choosing not to present, it's usually because of salary. So I write it in there, like I said, 70K less or 50K less. Or so I'm usually trying to pull it from people I'm talking to in the market right now, right? So what are candidates? Because hiring managers need to understand what the buyer wants. Like, what are candidates saying? So it's often the data is really about them, not about us. So candidates are earning this range. I've talked to 15 candidates that are earning this. This is all, 30, 40, 50K below what we're offering. So what do you want to do about it? So I usually just present it and then like kind of stay silent and let the hiring manager brainstorm with me. Like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't realize we were so far off. So usually like what their expectations are. In New York State, which I love, we don't ask what the candidate's earning, we ask what they're looking to earn. And so that's helpful data too, because it helps hiring managers understand like what candidates are going to be looking for to make that move.
Awesome.
But like
Awesome.
salary reports, like generic stuff like that, I don't find it's as impactful as I talk to our top 3 competitors and the HRBPs there are earning or wanting to earn X. It's like just much more specific.
Mm, great. Um, so now we have another question that's come in. Within my org, the hiring managers connect to our HR manager and director regarding their hiring needs and intake rather than me as the TA specialist. How do you politely go about getting this process changed so that you can effectively do your job as a recruiter and become a well trusted advisor?
I love it. Yeah, of course. This is what I was talking about that weird tension that exists between HR and TA. I did a 3-part series recently. It's on my LinkedIn profile for Recruiting Daily. I co-wrote it with Katie. You'll take a look at it. It's about TA and HR. And I was really proud of that series because we tried to break it down, like why is it happening and what can we do about it? It's a real issue. So I just want you to know you're not alone in this dynamic. It's really common. And part of it is that HRBPs, because they've gone through this growing pain of being strategic, they have really inflated egos right now where they feel more powerful than anyone else in HR. And we can't totally tackle that, but at least we need to be aware of why that's happening. What we can do is just make it really clear. And again, I wouldn't worry about politeness as much as candor. So like I would read Radical Candor. I would read Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. Again, the clarity, just it's clear. It's not, don't worry about it being polite or soft or it doesn't matter. It's the reality is TA needs to be in the intake meeting for the job to get filled, right? And it's just like a fact. And you can address it with leadership. Like I do believe you can start with leadership to say, it's really interesting. We have HRBPs in the intake meetings, but not TA. Why is that happening? Just try to stay curious about it. There might be a reason, but definitely infiltrate yourself to get in there. You deserve it. The candidates deserve it. It's better for everybody. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Why wouldn't you be there? It actually makes no sense. So just sometimes saying, like, I don't see why we're not in there. For example, I had a hiring manager a few months ago say to me, like, oh, we don't need a big group intake meeting. Like, I'll just let you know. She was internal HR. I'll just let you know what they want. And I said, you can do that. And then the role is probably going to stay open. I would estimate another 8 to 12 weeks because I have not met the decision makers. And so candidates are going to ask me what the decision makers are like, what their personalities are like, what their behavior is like, what they're looking for and needing and wanting, what their energy level is like. And I have no answers for them, right? So I look really uneducated to candidates. I don't see how that's going to be advantageous for us as a team. So is that polite? I guess so, but it's kind and clear, and it worked, right? Just
Yeah,
being
that's an
confident,
awesome way to
knowing your
tackle it.
value. You have to know you're worthy of that seat at the table in that room.
Fantastic. I love
Work.
it. I
It's
love it.
hard work. I don't
We're
want to diminish it though. It's hard work. It's the growing pains I'm talking about. And sometimes I still get nervous after 18 years in the business. So I don't want you to think it's easy. And that's why it's good to call a friend after you do it. Because it's like you need to tell somebody it's scary and you did it. So you can let any of us know if you do it. I'm happy to hear about it.
Yes, definitely report back to us. Well, you're getting lots of praise in the chat and the Q&A section. So it seems like people have very much enjoyed your session, as have I. So it looks like that is the end of our questions here.
Amazing.
Do you have any closing notes, Laura, ways people can get in contact with you if they have further
Yeah.
questions or want to connect with you?
I'm happy we did this in less than an hour. I know all of our attention spans are so short these days. So I'm excited for those of you who kind of stood with us this whole 50 minutes. Amazing. And the rest of you can check on all the notes tomorrow. I mean, yeah, stay active with us on social media. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Learn with Laura HR. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Where else am I? Clubhouse has been really fun. And just share with each other. Like, we're in this together. What we talked about today is hard work. I don't expect you to like get it all at once. I'm working on it every day. It's a practice. And so let's just try to remember we're doing this as a community, from our people pleasing, order taking ways to our strategic advisory ways. And there will be growing pains and it might feel a little murky and messy, but we're in it together and we will literally advance the profession faster if we do this collectively. So thanks for joining and thanks for having me, Nikhail.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for hopping on and presenting to everybody today, Laura. That we definitely appreciate it. So, thank you everyone as well to attending. Don't forget, if you are wanting to get your hands on the recording or maybe the slide deck, just be on the lookout for an email coming over to you today with those contained in it from me. So that'll be sent over to you. And if any of you are considering joining ATAP or getting involved in any one of our volunteer councils that enables important work like this live stream, please head over to atapglobal.org and head there to see how you might be able to volunteer or join this community. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your Thursday.
Bye, everyone.